Admiral Zethkar Voss stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars ahead with cold satisfaction. For 3,000 years, his people had moved from galaxy to galaxy like a storm across the cosmos. Behind him stretched 17 conquered galaxies, each one brought to heel with barely a fight. The pattern was always the same. His massive fleet would arrive, demonstrate their power by destroying a few ships or cities, and the local species would surrender within hours. The Corvani way was simple and effective. Why waste time with long wars when overwhelming force could end things quickly? Most alien races were smart enough to recognize hopeless odds when they saw them. They would kneel, accept Corvani rule, and life would continue under the Empire's guidance. It was efficient. It was logical. It had worked for centuries without fail. Today, they approached their next target. The scouts had reported a young species, called humans, living in a spiral galaxy ahead. Nothing special about them from what the reports showed. They had barely begun to explore their own star system when the Corvani first detected their radio signals decades ago. Now these humans had managed to build a few ships and venture into deep space, but they were still primitive by galactic standards. Admiral called out his communications officer. "We are receiving a transmission from the human vessel approaching our position." Voss turned his attention to the main display. There, impossibly small against the backdrop of his 200 warships, flew a single human spacecraft. It was sleek and white, with strange markings along its hull that read USS Defiant. The ship was perhaps 1,000th the size of his smallest dreadnought. "Put them through," Voss commanded, settling back in his command chair. This would be over quickly. On the bridge of the USS Defiant, Captain Ryan Mitchell stared at the sight before him through the main viewer. He had served in Earth's military for 15 years before joining the deep space program, but nothing had prepared him for this. The alien fleet stretched across space like a dark wall of metal and energy. Each ship dwarfed anything humans had ever built. The largest of them could probably hold his entire vessel in its cargo bay. "Captain," whispered Lieutenant Commander Lisa Harper from the tactical station, "I'm reading 200 ships. Their energy signatures are off the charts. Each one of those vessels could probably destroy our entire fleet back on Earth." Chief Engineer Alex Carter looked up from his console, his face pale. "Sir, their power readings don't make sense. I don't know how they generate that much energy without tearing their ships apart." Mitchell nodded grimly. When Earth's deep space monitoring stations had detected the massive energy signatures approaching from beyond the galactic rim, the governments of Earth had argued for days about how to respond. Some wanted to hide. Others suggested immediate surrender if the aliens proved hostile. But Mitchell and his crew had volunteered for this mission knowing they might not return home. The Defiant was humanity's most advanced warship, built with their best technology and crewed by their finest people. If these aliens wanted to conquer Earth, someone had to find out what humanity was dealing with. Someone had to make first contact and learn what these beings wanted. "Incoming transmission, Captain," reported the communications officer. On screen, the alien commander who appeared was tall and pale, with forearms and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of ages. When he spoke, his voice was calm and matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather. "I am Admiral Zethkar Voss of the Corvani Empire. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your species will submit to Corvani rule. Resistance is pointless. We have conquered over 2,000 civilizations across 17 galaxies. None have successfully opposed us. You have one of your time units to comply." The bridge fell silent. Mitchell could feel his crew waiting for his response. Harper's hand hovered over her weapons console. Carter was running diagnostics on their defensive systems. Everyone knew what they were facing. Mitchell stood slowly and walked to the center of the bridge. He had thought about this moment during the long journey from Earth. What would he say when humanity met its first alien civilization? What words would represent his entire species? "Admiral Voss," Mitchell said clearly, "this is Captain Ryan Mitchell of the United Earth vessel Defiant. I thank you for your message, but I'm afraid we must decline your generous offer." On his flagship, Admiral Voss blinked in surprise. In over 800 successful conquests, No species had ever responded to his surrender demand with politeness mixed with refusal. Most either begged for mercy or made angry threats. A few tried to bargain. None had ever declined as if he were offering them tea instead of demanding their submission. "Captain Mitchell," Voss said slowly, "perhaps you do not understand. My fleet contains 200 warships. Each one possesses the firepower to destroy your cities from orbit. Your single vessel cannot possibly stand against us. Surrender now and your people will be treated well under Corvani rule." Mitchell smiled grimly. "Admiral, I understand perfectly. You have overwhelming force and you've conquered many civilizations. But here's something you might not know about humans. We have a saying, 'Give me liberty or give me death.' It means we would rather die fighting than live as slaves." "That is illogical," Voss replied, genuine confusion in his voice. "Your destruction serves no purpose. Your death will not save your homeworld. Why choose meaningless sacrifice over survival?" "Because," Mitchell said, "sometimes the fight itself has meaning. Sometimes showing that someone was willing to stand up makes all the difference. My ship may not be able to stop your fleet, Admiral, but we can show the galaxy that humanity doesn't kneel." Harper looked up from her station. "Captain, they're powering up weapons on 12 ships targeting us." "All hands, this is the captain," Mitchell announced over the ship's communications system. "General quarters. We are about to engage a superior enemy force. I won't lie to you. Our chances of survival are almost zero. But we're not here to survive. We're here to show these aliens and anyone else watching that Earth breeds fighters, not servants. Man your stations. Do your duty. Make our people proud." Admiral Voss watched the small human ship as it turned to face his fleet. Its weapons were primitive by Corvani standards. Its shields barely worth mentioning. And yet something about this moment felt different from all his previous conquests. For the first time in centuries, he was facing beings who knew they would lose but chose to fight anyway. "Target their engines," he commanded. "Disable them quickly. I want to study these humans." But as his weapons fired and the human ship began to move, Voss realized he had made his first mistake in over 3,000 years. He had assumed that defeating the humans would be as simple as destroying their ship. He had not considered that some victories came at a price too high to pay. The first Corvani energy blast lit up space like lightning. Captain Mitchell gripped his command chair as the Defiant shook under the impact. The alien weapons were more powerful than anything in Earth's arsenal, but they had been designed to disable, not destroy. Admiral Voss clearly wanted to capture the human ship intact. "Damage report," Mitchell called out as sparks flew from several consoles. "Hull breach on deck 7, but we've sealed it," Carter reported from engineering. "Shields down to 60%, Captain. Their weapons are incredible. A direct hit would punch right through us." Lieutenant Commander Harper studied her tactical displays with intense focus. "Sir, I'm analyzing their attack patterns. They're not trying to kill us quickly. They're using what looks like stunning weapons, trying to disable our systems piece by piece." Mitchell nodded. "They want us alive for study. That gives us an advantage they don't expect." The Defiant rolled hard to port as another wave of energy. Blasts filled the space where it had been moments before. The human ship was small and fast compared to the massive Corvani vessels, but 12 enemy ships were more than enough to surround and capture it. On the Corvani flagship, Admiral Voss watched the human ship dodge his weapons with growing interest. Most species, when faced with his fleet's firepower, would either surrender immediately or panic and fly in random directions. But the humans were moving with purpose, using their ship's speed and size to stay ahead of his targeting systems. "Interesting," Voss murmured. "Their ship is primitive, but their pilot skills are better than expected." His tactical officer looked up from his station. "Admiral, the human vessel is moving toward the asteroid field. Should we follow?" Voss considered this. The nearby asteroid field was dense with rocky debris, the remains of an ancient planet. It would provide cover for the small human ship, but it would also trap them. "Yes, follow them in. They are only delaying the inevitable." Captain Mitchell had studied the star charts of this region during the long journey from Earth. The asteroid field ahead was dangerous, but it was also an opportunity. "Take us into the rocks, Helm. Nice and easy." The Defiant slipped between massive asteroids. using them as shields against the Corvani weapons. The alien ships followed, but their massive size made navigation through the field difficult. Several times, the largest Corvani vessels had to stop and go around asteroids they could not fit between. "Captain," Harper called out, "I've been studying their ship designs. They're built for overwhelming firepower and heavy armor, but they're not very maneuverable. In open space, they would destroy us quickly, but in here, their size works against them." Carter's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Sir, I've got an idea. These asteroids are rich in heavy metals. If we can position ourselves correctly, we might be able to use them as weapons." Mitchell smiled grimly. "Explain." "Their ships use massive energy weapons. If we can trick them into firing at us while we're positioned behind certain asteroids, the energy discharge might cause the metals in the rocks to explode. It would be like turning the asteroids into giant bombs." "That's insane," Harper said, but there was admiration in her voice. "It might actually work." The Defiant moved deeper into the asteroid field, with 6 Corvani ships in pursuit. The other ships had spread out to prevent the human vessel from escaping, but they were too far away to provide immediate support. Mitchell watched his displays carefully. The Corvani ships were closing in, their weapons charging for another volley. "Harper, can you calculate the exact position we need to be in?" "Working on it, sir." Her fingers flew over her console. "There. That asteroid directly ahead has enough metallic content to create a significant explosion if hit by their energy weapons." "Take us around behind it," Mitchell ordered. "Make it look like we're trying to hide." The Defiant swung around. The massive asteroid, positioning itself so that the rock was between the ship and the pursuing Corvani vessels. To the aliens, it would look like the humans were simply trying to use the asteroid as a shield. "They're charging weapons," Harper reported. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The Corvani energy blasts struck the asteroid with tremendous force. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the heavy metals in the rock began to react to the alien energy. The asteroid glowed brighter and brighter until suddenly it exploded with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The explosion caught 2 Corvani ships completely by surprise. The shockwave tore through their hulls, sending them spinning out of control. One ship lost all power and drifted helplessly. The other began venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. On his flagship, Admiral Voss stared at his displays in shock. In over 800 conquests, he had never lost a single ship to an enemy. Now the humans had destroyed 2 of his vessels using nothing but cleverness and his own weapons. "How did they do that?" demanded his tactical officer. "They used our power against us," Voss said slowly. "They turned that asteroid into a weapon using our own energy blasts." For the first time in centuries, he felt something he had almost forgotten: respect for an enemy. Captain Mitchell allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he watched the damaged Corvani ships fall behind. But the celebration was short-lived. 4 more enemy vessels were closing in, and they would be more careful now. "Sir," Carter reported, "that explosion damaged our rear shields. We're down to 30% overall protection. And they won't fall for the same trick twice," Harper added. "They're spreading out, trying to surround us." Mitchell studied the tactical display. The Corvani ships were indeed moving to encircle the Defiant, cutting off escape routes while staying clear of large asteroids. Their commanders had learned from their mistake. "Then we need a new trick," Mitchell said. "Harper, what else can you tell me about their ships?" "They're incredibly powerful, but they seem to have a weakness. Their weapons are designed for long-range combat. They don't appear to have any close-range defenses. If we could get close enough, we'd be suicide," Carter interrupted over the comm. "Their hull plating alone would crush us." "Not necessarily," Harper said, her voice growing excited. "Look at this. Their ships have massive energy conduits running along their hulls to power their weapons. If we could damage those conduits..." Mitchell saw what she was thinking. "Their own weapons would overload and destroy them from the inside." "Exactly. But we'd have to get within a few hundred meters of their hull. At that range, even their defensive systems could destroy us." The Defiant shook again as more Corvani weapons found their mark. The human ship was running out of hiding places, and the alien vessels were closing in from all sides. "Captain," the helm officer called out, "we can't stay in here much longer." They're going to box us in. Mitchell made his decision. Set course for the largest Corvani ship. Full speed. Sir? Harper looked at him in surprise. You heard me. We're going to ram them. Admiral Voss watched in amazement as the tiny human ship suddenly changed course and began flying directly at his flagship. It was impossible. No species had ever attempted such a suicidal attack against a Corvani vessel. They're trying to ram us, his tactical officer reported, disbelief clear in his voice. Impossible, Voss replied. Their ship would be destroyed on impact. They would accomplish nothing. But even as he spoke, Voss began to understand that he was dealing with a species unlike any he had encountered before. These humans did not think like other civilizations. They did not calculate odds and surrender when defeat was certain. They kept fighting even when victory was impossible. The USS Defiant streaked toward the massive Corvani flagship, its engines pushed to maximum power. On the bridge, Captain Mitchell watched the alien ship grow larger and larger on the main screen. All hands brace for impact, he announced. Then more quietly he added, It's been an honor serving with you all. At the last possible moment, the USS Defiant rolled hard to starboard and dove beneath the massive Corvani flagship. Instead of ramming the alien vessel, Captain Mitchell had used the feint to get his ship exactly where he wanted it, directly, underneath the enemy's hull at point-blank range. Now, Harper, Mitchell shouted. Lieutenant Commander Harper triggered every weapon the Defiant had. Laser cannons, missile tubes, and plasma charges all fired at once into the exposed energy conduits, running along the bottom of the Corvani ship. The human weapons, designed for ship-to-ship combat, tore through the alien conduits like paper. The effect was immediate and devastating. Explosions raced along the flagship's hull as its own energy systems turned against it. Secondary blasts erupted from weapon ports and engine sections. The massive ship, moments before an unstoppable force, began to list and lose power. Admiral Voss grabbed his command chair as his bridge shook violently. Emergency lights flashed red, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. Damage. Report, he barked. Primary weapons offline, his tactical officer reported, his voice tight with shock. Main engines at 20% power. Hull breaches on 17 decks. Sir, they've crippled us. Voss stared at the tactical display showing the small human ship pulling away from his damaged flagship. In 3,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever inflicted serious damage on a Corvani vessel. Now this primitive species had disabled his most powerful ship with a single attack. How? He whispered. The USS Defiant sped away from the crippled flagship, but there was no time to celebrate. 3 more Corvani ships were converging on their position, and the human vessel had taken heavy damage during its daring attack run. Status. Report. Mitchell called out as sparks flew from damaged consoles. Carter's voice came over the intercom, strained with effort. We've lost 40% of our hull plating. Life support is failing on 6 decks. And Captain, the quantum drive is showing dangerous fluctuations. One more hit like that and we're finished. How long can you keep us running? Mitchell asked. Maybe an hour, if we're lucky. But sir, I might be able to do something crazy with the quantum drive. If I can overload the containment field in a controlled way, we could create an energy pulse that would disable every ship within 1,000 kilometers. Harper looked up from her station. That would destroy us too. I know, Carter replied quietly. But it might be our only chance to stop them from reaching Earth. Before Mitchell could respond, new alerts began flashing on every console. Captain, Harper said, her voice filled with disbelief. I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching from multiple directions. More ships are arriving. On the main screen, space began to fill with additional Corvani vessels. 50 ships, then 100, then 200 more. It was another entire fleet, arriving to support Admiral Voss. My God, whispered the helm officer. There must be over 400 ships now. Mitchell felt his heart sink. They had fought brilliantly against impossible odds, but this was truly hopeless. Even if Carter's plan worked, they couldn't stop a force this massive. Then Harper gasped. Sir, wait. Those aren't all Corvani ships. I'm reading different energy signatures, different hull configurations. Captain, I think some of those ships are fighting each other. On his damaged flagship, Admiral Voss was receiving similar reports from his surviving communications officer. Sir, the 12th and 15th fleets have arrived as ordered, but they're also reporting contact with ships from the Zelani Republic, the Threx Coalition, and at least 6 other civilizations. It appears word of our battle has spread. Voss understood immediately. For centuries, many species had chafed under Corvani rule, but had never dared to resist. They had seen the Empire's power and accepted that rebellion was hopeless. But now, watching a single human ship cripple his flagship, they were beginning to think differently. The humans have shown them that we can be beaten, Voss said, a mixture of admiration and concern in his voice. They have done what I thought impossible. They have given others hope. The battle around the Defiant became chaos as dozens of different species engaged the Corvani fleets. Ships that had been forced to serve the Empire turned their weapons on their former masters. Others, long conquered and thought pacified, emerged from hiding to join the fight. Captain Mitchell watched in amazement as the tide of battle shifted around them. Harper, are you seeing this? Yes, sir. At least 30 different species are engaging Corvani forces. They're not coordinating with us, but they're definitely not shooting at us either. Carter's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, the quantum drive is ready, but with all these friendly ships around us, I'm not sure we should trigger the overload. We might hit allies along with enemies. Mitchell studied the tactical display. The spontaneous rebellion was spreading, but the Corvani still had superior numbers and firepower. Many of the rebel ships were being destroyed, their crews dying in hopeless attacks against better armed enemies. Carter, can you modify the overload? Instead of creating a destructive pulse, can you make it send out our sensor data? Everything we've learned about Corvani weaknesses? There was a pause. That's actually brilliant, sir. Instead of trying to destroy them all at once, we share what we've learned with everyone who's fighting. Level the playing field. Do it. As Carter worked frantically in engineering, the battle raged around them. The Defiant dodged between larger ships too damaged to contribute much to the fighting, but still refusing to retreat. Mitchell opened a channel to broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Mitchell of the Earth vessel Defiant. To all ships, engaging Corvani forces, we are transmitting tactical data on enemy weaknesses. Their ships are powerful but not invincible. Use their size against them. Target their energy conduits. Make them pay for every meter of space. The effect was immediate. Rebel ships began coordinating their attacks, focusing on the vulnerable points the humans had identified. Corvani vessels that had seemed unstoppable began taking serious damage. Admiral Voss watched his forces struggle against an enemy they had never faced before, a united galaxy fighting with purpose and knowledge, instead of fear and desperation. His ships were still superior individually, but they were outnumbered and facing opponents who now knew how to hurt them. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender demands from over 40 species. They want us to withdraw from their systems immediately, and if we refuse, they're threatening to unite permanently against us. Sir, if all these civilizations work together, they could match our firepower. Voss looked at the tactical display showing the USS Defiant, still flying despite massive damage, still broadcasting encouragement to the rebel forces. One small ship with a crew that refused to surrender had changed everything. They had shown the galaxy that the Corvani Empire could be beaten. Signal the fleet, Voss said finally. All ships are to withdraw to safe distance and await further orders. Sir? We're retreating? We are reassessing, Voss corrected. The humans have taught these civilizations something dangerous. They have shown them that courage and intelligence can overcome superior force. This is no longer a simple conquest. This has become a war. As the Corvani ships began to pull back, Captain Mitchell allowed himself a moment of relief. They had survived the impossible, and somehow they had sparked something even greater than their own resistance. Captain, Harper said, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. They want to know our status. Mitchell smiled grimly. Tell them we're still here. Tell them humanity has just made a lot of new friends. And tell them to get ready because the real fight is just beginning. The USS Defiant drifted through space, its hull scarred and blackened from the fierce battle. Emergency lights flickered on the bridge as Captain Mitchell surveyed the damage reports streaming across his screens. Life support was failing on 8 decks. The main engines were offline, and they had maybe 3 hours of power left. But around them, the galaxy was changing. Ships from dozens of worlds continued to arrive, drawn by the news that someone had finally stood up to the Corvani Empire. The rebellion that had started with one human vessel refusing to surrender was spreading faster than anyone could have imagined. "Captain," Harper reported from her damaged console, "I'm tracking Corvani fleet movements across 7 star systems. They're pulling back everywhere. It looks like they're regrouping for a major counterattack." Mitchell nodded grimly. He had expected this. The Corvani had ruled through fear and overwhelming force for thousands of years. They wouldn't simply accept defeat and go home. They would return with everything they had, determined to crush this rebellion before it could spread further. Chief Engineer Carter's voice came over the intercom, weak but determined. "Sir, I need to tell you something. The quantum drive is completely unstable now. The damage from our attack run has caused a cascade failure in the containment system. I can't fix it." "How long do we have?" Mitchell asked. "Maybe 6 hours before complete containment failure. When that happens, the explosion will be visible from 3 star systems away. Sir, we need to evacuate the ship." Mitchell looked around his bridge at the crew who had followed him into this impossible battle. These men and women had volunteered to face the unknown, knowing they might never see Earth again. They had fought with courage and skill against odds that should have meant certain death. "No," Mitchell said quietly. "We're not abandoning ship. Not yet." "Sir?" Harper looked at him with concern. "There's still work to do. Carter, can you control the timing of the containment failure?" There was a long pause before Carter replied. "Yes, sir, I can trigger it manually when you give the order. But Captain, anyone still on the ship when that happens?" "I understand." Mitchell opened a ship-wide communication channel. "All hands, this is the captain. I want everyone to listen carefully. Our quantum drive is going to explode in a few hours. I'm ordering all non-essential personnel to evacuate to the rescue ships that are standing by. But I need volunteers to stay behind for one final mission." Lieutenant Commander Harper immediately stepped forward. "I'm staying, sir." "Lisa, you don't have to." "With respect, Captain, yes I do. We started this together. We finish it together." One by one, other bridge officers made the same choice. The helm officer, the communication specialist, the weapons officer. Within minutes, half the crew had volunteered to remain aboard the doomed ship. Admiral Voss stood in his temporary command center aboard one of his undamaged vessels, studying reports from across the galaxy. The situation was worse than he had feared. The human example had not just inspired individual acts of rebellion. Entire star systems were declaring independence. Ancient alliances were being reborn. Species that had been enemies were uniting against Corvani rule. "Admiral," his intelligence officer reported, "we're receiving word that the Galactic Council is being reformed. Over 200 civilizations have agreed to join. They're calling it the Free Galaxy Alliance." Voss felt something he had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. For the first time since the Corvani Empire began its expansion, they faced enemies who were organized, determined, and no longer afraid. "What of the human ship?" he asked. "Still disabled, but operational. Our sensors indicate their power systems are failing. They cannot escape, but they also refuse our offers to surrender." Voss studied the tactical display showing the small human vessel surrounded by ships from dozens of worlds. Even now, facing certain death, the humans continued to broadcast tactical information to rebel forces. They were still fighting in the only way they could. "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted, "the human ship is moving. They're setting course directly for our main fleet concentration." On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Mitchell watched the massive Corvani fleet ahead grow larger on the main screen. 400 of the Empire's most powerful warships had gathered in defensive formation, waiting for reinforcements before launching their counterattack against the rebellion. "Carter, how much time do we have?" Mitchell asked. 40 minutes until cascade failure, sir. The explosion will take out everything within 500 kilometers. Perfect. Mitchell turned to address his remaining crew. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one last chance to make a difference. That fleet ahead represents the core of Corvani military power in this region. If we can disable even half of those ships, the rebellion will have time to organize and grow stronger. Harper looked up from her console. Sir, they're not going to let us get close enough. They know what we're planning. Then we'll have to be creative one more time. Mitchell smiled grimly. Open a channel to all rebel forces in the area. The communication went out on all frequencies. This is Captain Mitchell of the USS Defiant. In 30 minutes, our ship is going to explode with the force of a small star. We're going to take as many Corvani ships with us as we can. To all free ships in the area, this is your chance. When we create that opening, hit them with everything you have. Admiral Voss watched in amazement as rebel ships from across the system began moving toward his fleet. They were coordinating their attack to coincide with the human ship's final sacrifice. Even in death, these humans were still teaching others how to fight. All ships, prepare for battle, Voss ordered. Destroy that human vessel before it reaches us. The space around the Defiant erupted with enemy fire as the Corvani fleet desperately tried to stop the approaching ship. But rebel vessels threw themselves into the path of the alien weapons, sacrificing themselves to protect the humans' final run. 30 seconds to cascade failure, Carter reported. Mitchell gripped his command chair as the ship shook under massive weapons fire. All hands, it's been an honor. Harper, send our final message to Earth. Message ready, sir. Tell them, Mitchell said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Tell them that humanity kept its promise. We showed the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for. We showed them that freedom is never free, but it's always worth the price. The USS Defiant penetrated the heart of the Corvani fleet formation just as its quantum drive reached critical failure. The explosion that followed lit up space like a newborn star, consuming the human ship and 47 enemy vessels in a ball of pure energy. Admiral Voss, aboard one of the few surviving ships, watched the aftermath in silence. The human vessel was gone, but its sacrifice had crippled his fleet. Around him, rebel forces pressed their attack, no longer fighting in desperation but with the confidence of those who believed they could win. Admiral, his communications officer said quietly, we're receiving a priority transmission from the High Command. They're ordering a full withdrawal from this galaxy. Voss nodded. The Corvani Empire would retreat and regroup, but they would never again face a galaxy that accepted their rule without question. The humans had changed everything with their simple refusal to surrender. 6 months later, Earth received its first diplomatic contact from the Free Galaxy Alliance. The message was simple. Your people's sacrifice has not been forgotten. The galaxy is free because humanity chose to fight. We offer you friendship, alliance, and our eternal gratitude. Captain Ryan Mitchell and his crew never lived to see the galaxy they had helped liberate, but their names were remembered on 1,000 worlds, spoken with reverence by species who had learned that courage, not superior force, was the strongest weapon in the universe. The Corvani Empire still existed, but it no longer ruled galaxies with ease. Now it faced a united galaxy that had learned the most human of lessons, that freedom was worth any sacrifice, and that sometimes one small act of defiance could change everything.